Hey everyone, and welcome. If you've ever worked with Laravel or any PHP framework really, you know how quickly your HTML files can turn into a total mess of PHP tags, right? Well, today we're going to talk about the solution for that in the Laravel world, Blade. It's Laravel's awesome templating engine that's built to make your life so much easier. So let's dive in and see how it all works. All right, here's the game plan for today. We'll start with the basics. What even is a Blade file? Then we'll get into the fun stuff, Blade's superpowers, which are called directives. We'll also cover loops and layouts to keep your code nice and clean. And finally, I'll give you a heads up on a few common gotchas to save you some headaches down the road. Okay, so let's jump right into our first topic. What is a Blade file? To really get why Blade is so great, you first have to feel the pain of not using it. We've all been there, right? You're trying to put some logic into your HTML, and before you know it, it's just this tangled, unreadable spaghetti code of PHP tags. And boom, here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Take a look at the left side. That's your standard plain PHP. It works for sure, but man, it's just messy. All those opening and closing tags. Now look at the right. That's Blade. See how much cleaner that is? It's doing the exact same thing, but it's so much easier on the eyes. That right there is the magic of Blade in a nutshell. So to put a formal definition on it, Blade is Laravel's built-in templating engine. And here's a super important point. Blade doesn't stop you from using plain PHP. You can drop in regular PHP code whenever you need to. What happens behind the scenes is actually pretty cool. Laravel takes your Blade file, compiles it down into plain PHP, and then caches it. That means you get all this nice, clean syntax with absolutely zero performance hit. It's all just developer convenience. So where do these magical files live? Well, in any standard Laravel project, you're going to find them inside the resources/views folder. And the key thing to look for is that .blade.php extension. That's not a mistake. That double extension is how you tell Laravel, hey, run this file through the Blade engine before you do anything else. All right, let's talk about the number one thing you'll be doing in a view, displaying data. With Blade, it's honestly as easy as it gets. You just wrap your variable in these double curly braces. That's it. No more typing out PHP echo up million times. It's so much cleaner, and we'll get to this later, it actually has a really important security benefit built right in. Okay, now we're getting to the really cool part. Let's talk about Blade's superpowers, directives. This is where Blade goes from being just a nice-to-have to an absolute game changer. And it all starts with one little symbol, the @sign. So what is a directive? Think of it as a shortcut. It's a special command. You'll always spot it because it starts with that @ symbol, and its whole job is to replace a chunk of clunky PHP code like an if statement or a loop. The result? Your templates are way, way cleaner and just make more sense when you read them. Let's take a classic example, if statements. In Blade, you've got @if, @elseif, and @else. They work exactly like you'd expect them to in PHP. The only real difference is the super clean syntax and the fact that you always have to close your block with @end if. Honestly, that's a good thing. It forces your code to be well-structured. And it gets even better. Blade has these awesome directives for really common tasks. Like, how often do you need to check if a user is logged in? Instead of writing some messy PHP check, you just use @auth. And for visitors who aren't logged in, you use @guest. It's brilliant. Your code basically explains itself. You can just look at it and know exactly what's going on. All right, next up, let's talk about being efficient. You've probably heard of the dry principle in programming, don't repeat yourself. Well, Blade is your best friend when it comes to writing dry code, especially when you're dealing with loops and reusable page layouts. I mean, think about it. How many times do you need to loop through a list of things and display them? All the time. Blade's @for each directive makes this so clean. You can see exactly where the loop begins and where it ends with @end for each. No more hunting for that closing PHP bracket. The whole thing is just crystal clear. But wait, there's more. This is one of my favorite little Blade secrets. Whenever you're inside a for each loop, Blade gives you this special free variable called $loop. And trust me, this thing is like a little treasure chest packed with helpful info about what's happening in your loop. So what can you do with it? Well, you can easily check if you're on the very first item or the very last one. You can get the total number of items or what iteration you're on. This is so useful for things like, say, adding a special style to the last item in a list, or maybe displaying item 1 of 10. And the best part, you don't have to clutter up your controller with all that extra logic. Okay, the other huge way Blade helps you stay dry is with something called template inheritance. Think about your website's header and footer. You don't want to copy and paste that onto every single page, right? Of course not. With Blade, it's a simple 3-step dance. Step 1, you make a master layout file, and you use @yield to mark where the page content should go. Step 2, on your actual page, like your About Us page, you just say @extends to use that master layout. And finally, step 3, you wrap your page-specific stuff in a @section block. It's an incredibly powerful system that keeps your site structure super consistent. All right, for our last section, let's talk about a couple of common gotchas. These are the little things that trip up pretty much everyone when they're new to Blade. But don't worry, knowing these ahead of time is going to save you a ton of frustration. Okay, let's see if this sounds familiar. You just made a change to your Blade file. You hit save, you go to your browser, you hit refresh, and nothing. The old version is still there. You know you saved it, so what on earth is happening? Trust me, this is probably the #1 thing that drives new Laravel devs crazy. The culprit 9 times out of 10 is caching. See, for speed, Laravel compiles your nice Blade files down to fast PHP, and it saves those compiled versions. Usually, it's smart enough to see when you've made a change, but sometimes that cache just gets stale. The fix could not be simpler. Just pop open your terminal and run php artisan view clear. That's it. It wipes the old compiled views and forces Laravel to make new ones. Seriously, something like 60% of view problems are just an outdated cache. Next up, and this is a really important one, let's talk about security, specifically something called cross-site scripting, or XSS. That's a nasty type of attack where someone tries to inject malicious code into your site through, say, a comment form. The good news, Blade has your back on this, right out of the box. So remember those double curly braces we talked about? Well, whenever you use them, Blade is automatically protecting you. It takes any user input and escapes it, which basically means it turns potentially dangerous HTML into plain, harmless text. Now, if you ever really need to output raw HTML, and you'd better be 100% sure you trust that data, you can use this syntax with the exclamation marks. But the fact that the safe way is the default way, that's just smart, secure design. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The official Laravel docs are very, very clear about this. They basically say be super careful anytime you're showing content that came from a user. So if it's a comment, a user's bio, anything like that, just stick with the safe double curly braces. It's the right thing to do. And there you have it. That's a quick tour of the basics of Laravel Blade. We've seen how it makes your code so much cleaner, how directives give you awesome superpowers, and how to dodge those common little issues. So now I've got a question for you. With this new knowledge, what's the first reusable thing you're going to build? Maybe a slick little card component or a custom button? The sky's the limit. Thanks so much for tuning in.